Everybody knows that they should have an emergency fund, but what really is it? I asked ChatGPT for the 10 most commonly asked questions about emergency funds, and I'm going to answer each one with a realistic approach. I cover everything from how to build one, whether to pay off debt as well as save, common mistakes that people make, and loads more. So let's get into it. Jumping straight into these then, the number one most asked question is exactly what you'd expect. What is an emergency fund? Well, the most simple definition, I suppose, is a cash reserve set aside for unplanned, unexpected expenses. We'll dive deeper into the purpose of an emergency fund later on in this video, so keep watching for that. But now, question number 2 is, why do I need one? Okay, so the fund. I'm going to refer to the emergency fund as the fund from here because it's just easier to say. The fund helps you absorb financial shocks. Look, at some point, everyone is bound to have something happen that they just weren't prepared for. It doesn't matter how well you plan your finances. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I suppose the bigger reason why you need one is that it prevents you from resorting to high interest debt like credit cards and payday loans, which I've mentioned in previous videos are all just loan sharks, really. So that's what and why covered. Question number 3 is, how much should I have in my emergency fund? And this is where it gets personal because everyone's fund value will be different. Most guidance says that you should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved. Now, I think if you're going to properly prep for an emergency, then you should go for 6. Yes, you could argue that it's more cash not invested, but in my opinion, the opportunity cost is worth avoiding the potential stress. If you're thinking, fuck me, that's a lot of cash, you're right. Could you imagine if you didn't have it when you need it and you were forced to borrow it? This is where you've got to go through your finances and assess how much 6 months worth of core living expenses is. It's different for everyone. Things like your mortgage or rent, food shop and utility costs are unique to you. And depending on your personal situation, you might even take this a step further by thinking about your job stability, how regular your income is, your kids or pets, and anyone else that depends on you. These things might mean you'd be better off with a bigger buffer. As well as your main emergency fund, you might also want to consider a peace of mind fund. This is to cover the smaller things that life throws at you, like your car breaking down, your boiler packing in, or an unexpected bill dropping through the door, so you don't have to touch your main fund. This might be around £1,000 or what you spent on essentials in 1 month. I've gone through all the savings pots, rules and ratios you need to follow to succeed financially, whatever your income, in a previous video. Definitely check that out if you want to know how to set up the perfect budget for your personal finances. And if you're finding this interesting so far, please do me a massive favour and hit the like button. It really helps out a small channel like this one. But moving on to question number 4 then, how do I build an emergency fund? For this one, it's just a case of fucking doing it. There's no shortcut to saving a pile of cash. If you're in a position where your fund becomes the priority, which I'll come on to later, you just have to get your head down and save. One thing I would say that may speed up the process is pay yourself first. And what I mean by that is, when planning your finances for the month, set your savings aside first and work back from there. Most people will go about their life and might save any leftover cash at the end of the month. The best way is to prioritise the amount you put aside for savings and then make everything else fit. Which leads me nicely to question 5. Where should I keep my emergency fund? The most important thing is that it's liquid. You don't want to have that money invested in anything, because when you need the money, you don't want to be caught out trying to sell off the investment for the cash. Even if you had the money invested in something fairly liquid, like the stock market, there's a good chance that the market might have dipped when you need the cash, so you end up with less than you originally invested when you need to pull it out. That doesn't mean you need to have that cash tucked away under your mattress. The best place to keep your fund is in an easy access savings account. You can find accounts with decent interest rates, so your fund can actually make you a bit of money. Just make sure you don't stick it in an account that has like a 60-day notice or limits on the amount of withdrawals you can make. Because when something happens and you need the cash, you don't want to be scrambling around for it. So when should you use your emergency fund? That's question number 6. And trust me, you'll know. Have you ever had something happen that affects you financially that just makes you feel sick? That's the time. It's not for when you feel like treating yourself to something but don't have the cash right now. It's to cover you when things like job loss, medical bills and urgent repairs are sprung on you out of nowhere. If whatever happens ticks these boxes, unplanned, necessary and urgent, as in it absolutely cannot wait, only then should you consider deploying your fund. And with that, let's move on to question 7. What common mistakes do people make when building their emergency fund? I think a big one here is what I've just spoken about, people not using it properly. Another one I can see happening is people not building it soon enough. Even where people live quite frugally with low core living expenses, 6 months worth can still work out to be quite a big chunk of cash. So I can see people maybe struggling to put enough aside where it feels like they're making significant progress, so they just fuck it off. Or they might start but have to keep dipping into it before they have a fully funded fund. That comes down to personal budgeting really, and ensuring that your spending falls into all the correct ratios, like I explained in my previous video I mentioned earlier. So other than spending it when they shouldn't, or not building it soon enough, another one might be sitting on a full fund while also having high interest debt, which is question 8. Is it better to prioritise emergency savings or paying off debt? This is a tricky one to be fair, and the quickest answer is do both. There's no point having something that's draining you of funds while you're sitting on a pile of cash. But without that buffer in place, a crisis could force you to borrow more. So get your peace of mind fund in place, a small buffer to cover you in the short term, and then attack any debt with an interest rate of 8% or more, because that's what's killing you financially. After that's sorted, then your fund becomes the priority. Keep making the minimum payment on any other debt, but focus on your fund. When you're fully funded, switch your focus back to clearing that bad debt as fast as possible. So how long that debt sticks around depends on how quickly you can get your fund locked down. I suppose that's a bit of a motivator to get it sorted. It's also question number 9, how long will it take to build an emergency fund? Which is obviously going to be different for everyone, but I'd say anywhere from 6 to 36 months, because if you're following the budgeting framework and you take 6 months worth of 60% of your income, divided by 10 to 20% of your income, that's going to give you the number of months to get yourself fully funded. Watch the video I mentioned earlier on budgeting best practices, and that'll all make a lot more sense. It's a bit of a worst case scenario, but if you do want to speed up the process, make some sacrifices and allocate some of your wants budget to your fund. That's a bit of an insight to the video. The biggest thing at the end of the day is consistency. As long as it stays your top priority and you chip away at it with whatever you can, that's all you can do. Remember that getting your funds sorted means that when shit really hits the fan, you won't be scrambling around trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage next month. You'll be able to step back while maintaining the stability at home, properly assess your situation, and plan your next steps to get yourself back on track without feeling like you're drowning. So question number 10, the final question in this list is, what happens after I use it? How do I rebuild? And should I reassess how much I need? Absolutely yes. Every 6 months to a year, you need to calculate the sum of 6 months of core living expenses and ask yourself, do I have this in my fund? Yes, you're good. No, you need to top it up, and that should be your main focus. This is because lifestyles and expenses change, plus inflation continues to creep up on us. You should do this if you ever need to utilise your fund too. Obviously, top it up back to where it was as fast as you can, but make sure it's at a level to cover your current lifestyle. And that's that. That's the 10 most commonly asked questions about emergency funds according to ChatGPT, answered with a realistic approach. I'm interested in what you think. Have I missed anything, or would you tackle any of these questions differently? Let me know in the comments. And I tell you what, if you've watched up to this point, you are a massive personal finance geek, and I love it. In my previous video, the one I've already mentioned a few times, I go over some personal finance best practices, checklists and savings you should have in place, as well as a key budgeting framework. If you liked this video, you'll love that one. Click somewhere on screen to watch that now. But before you go, drop a like if you found this helpful, and if you want more straight up no BS videos on making money and personal finance, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.